Well, hello, everyone. My name is Denine Blevins. I'm the Executive Director of Kaleo, and I'm here with Minah Koela and Meaghan May. So we're just going to give everyone a few minutes to get logged on. And in the meantime, what I would love to hear from the two of you. Tell us a little bit about your families and what they're up to today. How about you?
Let Meaghan start.
Okay, today my first child, Austin, who is a girl, just turned 12. So we are doing birthday celebrations. But other than that, keeping up with laundry and dishes and doing those small daily tasks that make such a big difference.
And how many kids do you have, Meaghan?
Oh, I have 5. So between 12 and 2, they keep us on our toes.
How about you, Minah?
I have 4 kids. I think I said to you guys, I'm the oldest in this group. My firstborn is on the film shoot set. Is like filming. Is like a cameraman. Then the middle one is the creative of the house. He's building all sorts of instruments. So there's a noise in the house. He's building like all the African instruments and doing his PhD. And the other one is in class, and the other one is just like when he gets a time to skateboard, is making noise for the neighbors. Yeah, other than that, I have 4 dishwashers, so I am a happy woman. Dishwashers, cleaners, everything that you can call. So happy birthday to them again. But yeah.
Well, Meaghan, it sounds like you need those dishwashers with your appliances on the way.
I know. We can't lose any more. I'm so thankful for technology, but yes, our dishwasher and our dryer are out. They can't deliver them. It keeps getting delayed. So it's been a little bit.
I was broke down on lockdown, so they're complaining. They're walking around the house, especially the 14-year-old. Lord, can you give us a dishwasher? It's like it's locked down. It's not essential. You have 2 hands and your brothers.
Like you are the dishwasher.
Yeah, train them well.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Again, I want to welcome everyone that's here for our second Facebook Live of the day. My name is Denine Blevins. I'm the Executive Director of Kaleo, which is a global ministry that supports, trains, and values women in church planning. We found that women often carry a lot of the burden of church plants, whether it be the practical aspects of ministry or the relational burden of ministry, and yet they often don't have the training and the support or the titles to support that kind of work. So we think that supporting women in church planning is one of the most strategic things that we can do. We think that when you have healthy leaders, they produce healthy churches, and then we have communities that flourish. And so one of the key things that we do is that we help women apply the truth and the beauty of the gospel to the everyday struggles of their life, to be able to see things through a gospel lens when things seem out of control, which is something that we really need during this present reality of the coronavirus. So today we are interviewing 4 women throughout the day in church planning from all around the world. This morning, we interviewed Dar from Malaysia. She's one of our Kaleo trainers in Kuala Lumpur. And then today we have with us Minah Koela from Cape Town, South Africa, and Meaghan May from Washington, D.C. So we're so happy to be with you today. I've really enjoyed getting to know these 2 ladies over the last week or so as we've been preparing. We were just before we went live, like, I don't know what we were laughing about, but so let's just start with Meaghan. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do? And we'll share kind of our common thread throughout all that.
Yeah, so I am a wife, a mom of 5. We are in our second church plant here in the DC area. We're about 4 years in, and I'm also the regional advisor for the PCA's women's ministry through CDM, which means for the Northeast. And that means for like from where I am north to Canada, my job is to encourage women, but then also I'm a Kaleo local leader. And so I have the opportunity to come alongside and encourage other women who are in ministry with the gospel and to be encouraged by them as well. So it's a wonderful treat.
Thank you. So glad you're here, Meaghan. And how about you, Minah? Would you tell us a little bit about what you do in your community? and who you are?
Okay. Other than being a mother of 4 and the wife of 1 husband. um, so I am executive director of a Christian organization that seeks to service like the community. So sorry, I'm trying to calm down. So let me go back. I'm feeling like take 2. So as you all know, I'm Minah Koela. So I am an executive director of a Christian organization. We focus particularly in family preservation, child health, and education. And then in addition to that, my husband is crazy enough to decide to church plant. So I'm a church planter's wife. So, and I think I think what you said, Meaghan, is also like at work and then at church, you get to live out the gospel with other women and disciple and learn together. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you, Minah. Oh, this is what we were laughing about. We laughed at, for all 3 of us, we started in our roles. Minah as executive director of Beautiful Gate, Meaghan in her role with the PCA coming alongside women, and then me as my role with Cleos, right at the beginning when the coronavirus hit. And so in addition to navigating that huge change, we also had to pivot in so many ways. And for Minah and I both, people kept saying, well, the Lord brought you for such a time as this. And we're thinking, man, he really has bad timing. So for our first question for our time together, I would love to hear from both of you. How did church planning become a part of your life? Like, when did that start? So why don't we start with you, Meaghan?
Well, I was married to a man who ended up being a church planter, is how that started. But when we first were together, that wasn't the plan. And we went to seminary, and then we were working in churches, and God was really good to us in that we were in churches, obviously in different stages of growth, and we got to see a long picture of what a church in different stages can look like, so that we had that larger view. But at one point, maybe 6 years into our ministry after seminary, someone said, you should plant a church, my husband. And so we started praying about it, but we laughed really hard. And then very quickly, God provided what we needed to do that. And so we went and planted our first church, which was in South Dakota. And we were there and watched that grow and loved the community. And then God kind of led us to believe it was time to plant another church here in the DC area, where we have gotten to meet people, and people are from all over the world, and it's a very diverse community. And we're very thankful. I think the idea that church plants are one of the best places to share the gospel, that people are more likely to come to a church plant than a church that's been established, really motivated us, because both my husband and I came to know the Lord in our high school years. And our heart really is to share the gospel with people that aren't in church, and to let them know the wonder of the covenant community. And so God just turned our hearts that way, and has really blessed us to get to know people and tell them what a difference it makes to be in relationship with the Lord. So
Thanks,
sorry. Yeah.
No, thank you. I love that. For you and your husband both had a passion for sharing the gospel with people. That was kind of, it seems to have been part of your DNA early on in your marriage. Yeah. Thank you, Meaghan. How about you, Minah?
So actually, we met. I was a missionary and he was a missionary in student ministry. And I don't think church plant was part of our thinking or my thinking. He was an ordained pastor, but more like a student pastor doing like missionary work in universities. And in the late 90s, we were asked to help a church plant in Kailicha. And I think for both of us, we always have this heart for a cross-cultural church. So we also, like, we ask some time to help another church plant. And then we took a break for 5 years. Again, with like, I think like in 2017, that each again. And then he came back, says, I feel like that. I was like, can your Lord stay with you and leave me alone? I'm happy not to be involved. Okay, just like you and your Jesus aside, let me live this life of being like a complainer on the sides. He's like, no, I feel like the Lord wants us to church plant. So, and again, I think the opportunity, the Lord open up an opportunity for us to go to New York for 3 months. I mean, not for 3 months in New York, but we went to New York, and then we took that time to really pray if this is the real thing that we are doing. We went for the church planters training, but also just spend most of our time thinking, is this what we want? And then I think it became more evident that this is what we want to do. I mean, we're not even a year in our church plant. We are more on the gathering stage. And then COVID comes. I'm like, Lord, seriously? Are you going to do this to me now? So that's how we like kind of like being included. And I met, and then I was invited to go to Paracaleo. And again, I didn't read much because I was on holiday mood, but I was interested to go. And I think that's how I got like more interested in terms of like intentionally also working alongside with women with a particular purpose, you know. So yeah.
Oh, so good. Thanks, Minah. So I hear that just the difference in the story. So for Meaghan, that may have been more of a natural flow into church planning, where Minah's history was more, you know, it maybe wasn't on your radar, and then God just kind of tricked you into it or led you into that. And for me, I was a single woman. I had been, you know, I was a missionary in the Dominican Republic and started hearing all these messages about church planning and started to get intrigued, and then landed back in New York and got reconnected with my former pastor that was starting a church. And so that's how I kind of got involved. And that's how Minah and I met, because at that church planning training, I was there and I saw you there. Great. So I would love to hear a little bit about how COVID-19 is affecting the churches in your context in DC and also in Cape Town. Minah, I would love to start with you. Like, how do you feel the coronavirus affecting the church community there?
I think the coronavirus is really like affecting the churches in a way that people are not able to meet. But I think, you know, I'm very honest about certain things. So one of the things that has been like a wrestle for me and how we see the church is that coronavirus, it kind of like opens up the door of the wider division that we have in our societies. I don't know if you guys have been in South Africa. We still have this like highway, you know, the boundaries, like where I work is like, it will be like the woods in America, where our, like even my church, even though it's a small church plant, we have access to Zoom. So churches are active on Zoom and meeting, but then the churches on the other side, there's nothing that they are able to do because they are not able to meet because of the coronavirus and the restrictions and the police moving people away from being able to be at church. But the second thing is that people don't have data, you know, like we don't have good internet. So churches are not, people's phones get stolen. So there's no tech savvy in that way in terms of people being able to get to hear the message. But having said that, then the churches that are affluent, they're able to provide like things like masks, things like finances for NGOs. So the church is active in that sense that now people are forced to do things that they would have like in the past would have deemed as social justice. That's something that is done out there. But now the church is active in saying like, what can we do in this with the street ministries? What can we do with these organizations? Some churches are sewing masks. Some churches are giving financial support. Some church members are making soup kitchens. So the church is almost like it's activated outside the buildings of a normal Sunday service.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a good and bad, but also you see that all of a sudden the church is not just the building. It's like God's people are being released to do things without expecting the church to send them to do those things in their communities.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I hear so much. Just that tension between the beauty and the brokenness in that. On one hand, you know, we have this devastating impact of coronavirus, and then on the other hand, we see the church being the church and really being moved and moved outward and being active in that sense. So while Meaghan, as you're getting ready to respond, I would love, let me talk to our viewers for a second. Do two things for me. One, if you're part of a church plant, give us a thumbs up or a smiley face or a frown face if that's your experience. And also tell us in a few words, how is Corona affecting your church plant that you're a part of or your established church? Meaghan, would you share the same thing? How is Corona affecting the churches in DC?
Well, I can't speak for all of them, but I love what you said, Minah, that they're released, because I do think, and that's one of my favorite things about being a church plant, is I do feel like we're more of a food truck than a restaurant. And so we're bringing to people what they need often, and sometimes they don't even know that that's what they need. But to see people use their gifts, and we're also a smaller church. So women in my church who are gifted with a sewing machine are making masks for the hospital workers. We had a lady early on ask if anyone could help with that. We've been doing backpack buddies with the school, which is a program for kids who don't have they have low food security, and so they don't have food when they go home on the weekends, but they can get food at school during the week. Well, now there's not school, so we've been continuing our backpack buddies program, and I have a dear friend who's basically been running it, and she's been wrapping toilet paper in gift wrap so that the kids unwrap it with joy every week. Like, they're excited about the toilet paper. So making everyday things precious, like using those everyday things to be a point of connection. We have a pandemic pantry in the same lady's garage where people are just dropping off food for anyone that might need it, and then people that need it, we've asked people to go neighbor to neighbor. If you know your neighbor needs something, be our eyes and let us know so that we as a church can support. But the people in our church, a lot of people have been furloughed from their jobs or have had a lot of cutbacks, so they're relying on savings, or they're working really hard. We have some lovely people who are taking on more jobs and working for Amazon and the grocery store to try to make ends meet. I think the hardest thing is that it causes us to miss celebrating moments or lamenting and sorrowing together face to face as a church body, because we've had a few people who have lost family members. We've had a couple people move, and then we've had a birth and another one coming in our church. And so how we do that, we've had to be more creative, and we've missed each other more than ever. We did a hug in a mug and dropped off coffee for women in our church and for frontline workers at a hospital. So just trying to find ways to say, you're not alone in this, and we see you and we're here, and then to create spaces to pray together or meet and study the word. But it's caused us to have to say, what's essential and how can we find a new way to be the church together?
That's a good phrase. What's essential and how can we find a new way? I really love that. Ladies, I'm gonna go off a little bit off script, but just want to ask a question that just kind of sense. So Minah, when you talked about you talked about the disparities between churches, how some churches are able to go digital and other churches don't have that privilege. We also see a difference in how coronavirus is impacting people depending on where they live. We see in New York City and in Paris and a lot of our urban centers where people live in closer community together, the virus is spreading a lot more. Where a friend of ours from our church plant in New York passed away. I mean, he's a young father, and so so for me that lives down south, I don't feel the impact as much, and then for others they do. I would love to hear from the two of you. How do you process the emotional impact of Corona in your own lives, understanding that it's going to be different, and then how have you been coming alongside others in their sense of grief and loss? So how are you experiencing it for yourself, and then how are you coming alongside others?
It's been, I think it hasn't hit us like it has in terms of like people dying in South Africa yet, people that we know. But for me, it has, I think I said to you guys, it made me to lament, to cry to God about this suffering. and I was part of songwriter, what have you. And I wrote, I've never written a song. I always sing other people's songs. But I wrote this thing with a painful heart of, if you live on the other side where I work, there is a sense where you feel that God has forgotten about you, because there's no space to self-isolate. There's no space for pastors to use their gifts in the way they know how. There's a sense of, how long, God, will this go on? You know, and I think that has been my struggle. And also, like, coming from reform circles, like, the lament is there, and then you feel like, no, I can't be like this angry at God. And then I was like, no, I am angry, God. You know, right. I see this pain that I'm not able, because I think we're fixers. And then I'm like, Lord, we can't, I don't even know how to, yes, we give people food. Yes, we give all these things but we're not able to even touch their hearts, especially those pastors that are able to, like, if you look at the closer culture, I don't know, American culture, the township churches, what makes me feel I'm cared for is when people visit. When I see the pastor sitting at my house and prays for me when I have lost a child, when something that has happened, which is very difficult now for that to happen. And then you come on this side, and then you realize that the pain is not on the other side only. The pain is on this side, where you're feeling like you can't go to the coffee shop, you can't pop up, you can't do things. So you are in this, like, almost like the now and the not yet of the kingdom, where my kids are at school, where they get sent things for church, but then the other kids on the other side, they are not able, and then feeling like, Lord, why am I in this thing? Because, like, it's me, but I'm feeling all these two tension at one time. And also, like, feeling like it's okay for me to just, like, let go and say, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to encourage, because I'm also broken right now. Would you carry me? So I think that has been like I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that has been like seeing this kind of, like, this tension at this time, and feeling that what has been normal is no longer normal. Then what is the new normal? Because we don't even know what is the new normal.
Right.
So,
right,
yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that hits me on so many levels. Not just that sense of, almost that sense of guilt that, I shared it in the first Facebook Live, but the sense of, I'm okay, but you're not okay. So that I'm not okay, and just that sense of interconnectedness between us, which the coronavirus has really shown us, that we are interconnected, that we can't separate, one person's well-being from our own well-being. Meaghan, how about you? How is this hitting your heart? And
I think when we first spoke, I had mentioned to you that it caused me to remember that I am not omni. And I heard you mention that this morning, where I realize that I'm limited. And so it's caused me to pray a lot more. I have to sneak in times to pray, and to remember that while I might have fears, the Lord, to remember, the fear of the Lord, and to remember his sovereignty and that he's in control. But it's been a gift to be more dependent, and to have to be thankful for the little things, and to press forward in faith and rely on his strength and not my own, which is humbling. But at the same time, to see him meet us in that has been also such a gift, and to celebrate when I see him meet other people, where I would normally rush right in and be present. When I can't now, I kind of am watching to see, Lord, what are you going to do? And to see that he finds a way to comfort people, and to love them, and to celebrate that, and to say to them, like, I just saw that, and enjoy that together has been a gift. But a lot more prayer, and trying to find unique ways to be in the Word with everybody on top of each other.
Yeah. I really love
singing, lots of songs, lots of singing.
Yeah. I really love one of the things that you sent to me, Meaghan, when you talked about experiencing God in the places that are the hardest, and how we really, those are the places where we really see his presence. I just jotted down this phrase that you said, when your fears can this is an exact quote, we can go back and watch the video later, but when your fears overcome you, like remembering the fear of the Lord, it's like, oh yes. Because I have so many fears. Like, I don't want my husband to go out, without a mask on. And when he comes back in, I want to spray him down and like make him wash his hands. Just surrendering those fears. Thank you both. Thank you both for sharing your heart on that. Let's shift a little bit to Parakaleo. Meaghan, starting with you, I'd love to know, how did you first get connected with Parakaleo, and what did that do for your own heart?
Yeah, I think I was asking my husband about this. I think it was about 2011-ish. We went to what was then called Global Church Advancement, which was a place to encourage and equip church planters. And they had a breakout session for Parakaleo. And so I sat in on the workshop with Tammy, and was going to be Ruth Ann, but she had the flu at the time. And so I remember Tammy asked us all to tell a little bit about ourselves on our name tag, and I couldn't even fill it out. After 10 years of being my husband's wife, I couldn't tell anybody anything about what was unique about me or who I was. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me. Like, I'll always remember that. But anyway, so I kept Tammy's card, and we were planting our church, and I thought, well, I'm okay. And then we hit a hard season. My father got sick and eventually passed away, and there were lots of things going on, and church planting was messier than I was expecting. And so I reached out and was so thankful to land Gospel Side Up, is what I say, and to find this community of women who reminded me of the story that I was in that was larger. But it was something that I didn't know that I needed until I started hearing people speak a language that echoed what I was having in my head but couldn't see straight, and to start singing along with them. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen anybody and they're like, they've got headphones in but they're dancing, and I think for a long time I was trying to dance like those people, right? But I couldn't hear their music, and all of a sudden I could hear the music, so then I could dance instead of just trying to look like the people that were dancing.
Yeah, wow.
I don't know if it makes sense, but it changed everything. We would not still be in ministry if I had not had friends remind me what was true, and not just my husband, right? I needed other people who understood the uniqueness of our role, who could say, I'm praying for you, and God's love is right there, and his smile is over you. And so I'm forever thankful.
So good. Yeah, thank you. I really love that analogy as a dancer, I love that analogy of trying to mimic the dance steps.
Yeah. I spent too much of my life trying to mimic the dance steps instead of dance to the music.
Good. Minah, how about you? Tell us about how you first encountered Parakaleo, or how it encountered you.
So as I said, I think in the beginning, we went to New York for two things: to just figure out what God was saying to us, whether we should church plant or not. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it was like, we have never had a holiday since we've been married. We've been in 100% on ministry, and we were broken human beings. And when before we got to New York, you had to sign up. So what's her name? I think Amanda. She said "Sawubona sis," which is in like hello in Zulu. I was like, yes, there's an African person there. Mm-hmm. So I signed up to go to Parakaleo for that. But also, like, when I realized it was something to do with women, it drew me back to my kind of like church history, where they're gonna teach me how to be a good wife and have lots of sex and whatever they say in those kind of things, sorry for that, but like, like how to be like a good sort of like calm, and I'm loud and out there, kind of like, how to streamline you in so I was like, Lord, but it's for holiday. I don't know anything about New York. I don't care, but I'm gonna go. I don't know anyone. It was one of those things, you don't know anyone. Yeah. So it's not like you're gonna hoping that you're gonna put in a room with someone but you're like, I don't know anyone. This is the other world. So we went, and the first day I came, it changed everything that I thought the place would be like. First of all, I thought they're gonna teach me about how to teach Bible study to women. It's going to tell me, and then we were given a paper to describe who we are. Not what people say you are, but who you are. And I saw Sherry, as crazy as I am. I said, I have found my twin. I can be myself.
And for those who don't know, you're talking about Shari.
Freedom. Yeah.
You know,
Co-founder.
and it was more like finding like us. We danced actually. I think we danced the first night. I was like, wow, you know, and it kind of like it took me a few days to actually unpack my preconceived ideas about, you know, what I was thinking I'm going for and what I received. But I always say, like, I feel like I became a Christian in 1995. So I feel like I have a double salvation at Freedom Square. First, I was released by Mandela because then in South Africa I was free. And then I was like freed by Jesus. Mm-hmm. But I think the third freedom was like, I can be Minah. And not because I've always lived in the shadow of my husband, and kind of like you have to tame yourself, how you present yourself in public. To a point, you lose who you are. So I think that unleashed the fact that I need to know who I am. So it was kind of like, and I think we got connected with Sherry in terms of like knowing who I am, and it was completely different to what I was expecting it to be. Mm-hmm. It was women who have been in ministry for a long time, who are broken, who are actually having a space to unleash what was inside without judgment, in a sense, without feeling like you can't say that because it might go back to the church members, but you could just let it go, like a 4th of July, if I may say so.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love the way that your backgrounds and your stories are different, but there's that intersection of, you know, you came not sure if you can just be your truest self, and how that experience released you to just be who you were, you know. And I had a similar experience. It's going to Parakaleo as a single woman in church planning, was part of a core leadership team, and going into the space where everyone else was married, and yet feeling so affirmed in my status as a single woman, a single mission-minded leader in her own right, still loving marriage and making marriage, and I am now, but I love how affirming that experience was for me too, as a single person. So let's move to, okay, this is my favorite question. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, while we're talking, let me hear from those of you who are viewing. What was your first experience with Parakaleo? Was it a taste of Parakaleo? Was it a conversation with, alongside conversation with someone who's a trainer? Was it a basic training? So just put in the comments, or if you've gone to other trainings, you can put that in the comments too. We'd love to know where you're coming from and what your experience has been. So Parakaleo, one of the things that our co-founders have created are a series of what we call tools. And these are memorable, visual ways of taking the truth of the gospel and applying it from head to heart to help you see everyday struggles or situations or block longings through a gospel lens. So whether it be, you know, a visual or whether it be an object. So we call those tools an arsenal. So I would love to hear from Meaghan and Minah. Minah, I'm going to start with you. What is your go-to arsenal, especially, and I've got it right here.
Show it. I think we were chatting. I think in the last few weeks, it's just been like the verdict. Can you show them, please? Boom.
What does this symbolize, Minah?
This symbolize that I think it's like a judgment, whether you're declared free or you're going to jail, something like that. But I think it's such a freeing tool, in a sense that I think in the beginning we talked about being new in the job, and where you feel, first of all, you feel like you judge yourself because you are trying to prove to everybody else that you are the right person for the job, but no one asked you that. But that's the feeling inside, proving and judging yourself. And that because you're judging yourself, you assume that people are judging you. You're assuming that God made a mistake, is judging you for what you are doing. And I remember in Parakaleo, one lady used that, but she kind of like, boom, and like, you know, it boom, and feeling like this freedom, you are declared not guilty. And I think you feel inadequate at this time, especially with Corona. And then I think the three of us being new leaders, and I think you judge yourself. You feel like you feel judged you feel like you are not doing a good job, you accuse yourself, and then you allow Satan to accuse yourself, because then you don't trust the God who has declared you guiltless and free. So I think this in these past few weeks also, even just particularly this week, that has been a sort of like a thingy, a reminder. I was looking for mine. It's somewhere in my stuff. I was like, I need it, because I feel even like one of the ladies at work this afternoon actually prayed for me, because you feel that you're not confident, and then that's who you are. That's how you are judging yourself, and as if God made a mistake to create you and make you to the place you are, whether being a church planter or leading an organization or leading a ministry, these voices of the accuser. But I think that is a reminder that I have been declared not guilty and I am free. And I think that is, I mustn't say too much things. I am free.
Love it.
Hang it.
Yes. Yeah, it's such a reminder that, like God has declared us free. And it's not that he approves of everything that we do, but he loves us, and our righteousness doesn't depend on our performance, but it depends on what he's already done. And so, yeah, I love that. And I so resonated with what you said about being a new executive director and having all these expectations that nobody else is even, and maybe they are, but in the most case, nobody's putting it on us. It's the voices that kind of run in our own head. It's like, no, I am chosen by God, righteous before him. Okay. How about you, Meaghan?
So I had mentioned the role navigation boxes has been really helpful for me. And I love that you have it up there, and for a number of reasons. But first, they all fit within this one larger box, which is us and our limits. And so it's been really a gift in a lot of ways to come up against my limits and to know, like, that's the boundary. I can't do more. There's only 24 hours in a day. But when we first had this quarantine start, my children moved in onto the dining table. We were 5 of us. We're going to do school together. And then all of a sudden church moved into our living room because we're going to meet from our home. And I felt dizzy that first Sunday coming down and seeing my husband had set up this spread with lights and cameras, and I just all of a sudden felt really overwhelmed. But I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me is to remember my truest identity that never changes, even though all of this is changing, and to, then to consider how I'm uniquely made and how it can, how it can be played out in this role. But the thing that also became really helpful, and I was talking with another woman about this a little while ago, was to realize the context, roles, and daily living, that right side, those things that are always changing, every single one of them was different. BC, before Corona, as I've heard some people say that, my husband's been saying that, and after. And so for me to take time to say, what were those things before Corona? And then to see how they were completely different in all the roles and hats that I was now wearing, because I was now the teacher and the mom and the pastor's wife and the friend and all of those things all at the same time. My relational, personal, missional, spiritual, all of those things got squished together into one place. And I was feeling overwhelmed and like I couldn't, really handle it. But it was helpful to pull that out and kind of make that list and say, well, this is why it feels so different, because it is, my circumstances have changed. And then because I was able to list that out, to hand that over to God and say, how can I glorify you today? And I love one of the things we say, that there's 1,000 ways to live that out. When I think of God, when he created the world and it was formless and void, often right now in quarantine, I feel like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, it's pretty formless and void. I might have a few, Zoom calls, or I know these things need to be done for the kids, but how do you want me to fill these days, Lord? And how can I glorify you? And it might look different, and it probably will, than yesterday, even now in this new normal. But to entrust that to him and say, even though I'm limited, you are sovereign, and all of this is seen under your larger story. And so where I can't love everywhere and be everywhere and fix all these things, and it makes me come to you and say, please handle all these things that are out of my hand, and and to love locally, or, you know, love my kid that's right in front of me that's crying because of school. So it's been just really helpful for me to focus in on what is mine to be responsible and to steward well, but then to hand over everything else and say, this is yours, Lord. You're the one who's going to bring it all together. So you're the one who's bringing it all to completion or upholding it all. So
I love how you were able to use that Parakaleo tool and help it. More than anything, it helped you understand what was going on inside your heart. And I think for me, that's always been the magic of these tools, to not to fix my situation, but to help me see what's going on inside here. What are the substitute saviors that I'm relying on? You know, I think that many times that we rest in our roles as leaders, or as wives, or as friends, or as daughters, you know, those are the roles that we lean on. And then when that gets shifted, it puts us off course, where we need to be leaning into our identity, you know, our identity as daughters in Christ, so that the roles can change, our context can change, but that's the one thing that keeps us stable. So I really love how you both can see your circumstances in light of those realities. So as we wrap up our time together, ladies, I would love to hear from you. Let's start with Meaghan this time. Like, what words of encouragement do you have for other women in this season?
Gosh, yeah. When I said yes to this, I was like, I hope I'll have some words, because you never know in the given moment. Right now, the words that come to me are just, you know, we can't do this by ourselves. Like what this talk time is called, like we weren't made for this, because we're made to be dependent upon the Lord. And so where you're finding your limitedness, I pray that that will be an invitation for you to lean in and to find him to be the sufficient one. You know, when in Deuteronomy, but God speaking through Moses is telling them, you know, Moses isn't going to go with you into the promised land, but Joshua is. And they're all really afraid because they've been following him. And he says, be strong and courageous. You know, the Lord your God's going to be with you. And so it's not about the person you're following in, but it's going to be me. And in Ephesians 6, you know, it's be strong in the Lord. And so just, you can trust that your footing is strong in him, and you don't have to find the strength within you, and let your weakness be an invitation to his strength.
So good. Thank you. Thanks, Meaghan. How about you, Minah? What would you say to other women as an encouragement during this season?
I think what Meaghan is saying is one of the best things that I have ever done in my life is finding Christ, because I think he enables us to do things. But what I love about the faith in Christ is God's word doesn't change. You know, the words that we say are tainted with attitude and whatever, but his word makes us alive. And I think if people can find, even just as a comfort reading of God's word, going through God's word, you find comfort in his word. And you find surety that actually we are not unique. Many people before us have gone through different difficult things in the Bible that maybe are even worse than that we're going through now, right now. If you think of the floods, you know, if you think of so many things, the plagues and all these kind of things, but you're realizing that when you are in him, he walks with us. And sometimes these are the times for us to find Jesus, because he finds us in the times of being desperate, that maybe he's been looking and knocking, and this is the time where you kind of like your mind and your heart is open to say, I have nothing else. Can I just try you? Because nothing works, but you work. But I find God's word, it never changes. It's almost like this best book that you can have. And I think, as I said to you ladies, I was thinking of like the Bible talks in Psalm 127 about, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers built in vain. But then you go to the New Testament, it talks about cornerstone. If you have lived in the village, the building, if it doesn't have a strong foundation, it doesn't hold. So you builders have to put that foundation. But then how we find him in his word. And then his spirit makes his word alive. And then here we are today talking. I would not, who would have known that we will meet? It's because of him, you know. We find joy in the times of darkness and laugh at our situation, that God is in control. Nothing takes him by surprise. It's also in the Bible, right?
Yes. Thank you so much, Minah. Thank you, both of you, for your words of wisdom, for your leadership in your communities and in your churches, and for sharing your heart in front of women who are out there. And so for our viewers, we want to, one of the things that we want to do through this series is to model for you the process of just having honest conversations with other women. Coronavirus can't stop that. And I mean, at the same time, we want to remember our brothers and sisters that don't have this privilege of meeting this way. So maybe God might use you and your resources to help in some way, to be a blessing to them in their context as well. So I want to leave you just with a couple of closing things. We have one more Facebook Live interview today with Ruth Garza from Monterrey, Mexico. It's going to be bilingual, so please don't miss it. It's our first bilingual Facebook Live event ever. It's really only our third, so and so we'll have a translator there. And I also want to encourage you, especially if you've been walking with Parakaleo in one form or another, and you're familiar with what we do for women, you're excited about the work, we need your partnership. So I want you to consider coming alongside us as we come alongside women like Meaghan and Minah by becoming a monthly partner. Think about it as a gift in terms of $10 or $15 a month or more, if God would lead you that way. And this is just a way for you to advance the work that we're doing so that we can go to all ends of the earth. And to do that, you would just go to our website, click on the donate button, and you can get it set up. So if you've enjoyed our time together, again, please come back later today, 8 o'clock Eastern with Ruth. And we're so grateful to have all of you here. Sisters, thank you so much. I'm sure this is not our last conversation. And everyone else, have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
And good night.
Good night, yes.